Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Afternoon Tea with ET. I just can't believe it. Our fifth episode, our fifth podcast. So it's just crazy how quickly time is going by. Um, Hello, I hope everyone's doing great. Autumn, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm getting by here. I'm making my way through the last of these Mercury retrograde energies, which was a great way to finish off the eclipse month. I feel like it was a doozy. I don't know how
I
you feel
feel,
about it, but
well, I feel we should all sort of jump up and down and start celebrating because,
celebrating, yeah.
yeah, because seriously, technology goes out the window. I've had craziness with technology because of Mercury retrograde. So there's definitely been a shift, and thank God it's sort of
Yeah,
moving to the next phase.
right. We knew we were done with the those vibes today when we logged on and our mics were working immediately and we didn't have to do anything about it.
Yeah, totally.
So it's a good sign, I think. Good omen.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure, for sure. Okay, well, I was thinking about kind of what to talk about today, because we're kind of doing a follow-on from last week's more chilled out sort of podcast, not with a specific deep dive in mind. And one of the things that came up for me was, we were talking about our experiences last time and sharing some of our insights from them. And we talked a little bit about our filters for our consciousness. And I kind of feel that this subject kind of warrants greater exploration. So we might do a deep dive on that subject at some point moving forward. But I wanted to add something to last week, and that is that whatever people are experiencing out there, whatever your experience is, I feel it's so important to acknowledge and explore it. Because, if we're experiencing something, it's because we are of that vibration. It's the appropriate timing for whatever it is that's coming up. And if you really allow yourself to accept and explore, we open ourselves to discovering more of the infinite deep mystery of like who we are. This was a real sort of like hanging over energy for me from last week that I kind of felt really guided to kind of share. And because our consciousness, our awareness is innately intelligent in ways that we don't really have any conscious awareness of. So I just wanted to say to everybody following last week, trust and embrace your experience as a gift and potential catalyst for growth and expansion. And then as I was sort of sat kind of just thinking about today's podcast in advance, connecting in, very strongly the idea of the practices of self-love, self-trust, allowance, journaling, allowing feeling, presence, observation, and intuitive action all came up really, really strongly. So that's my 2 cents worth to kind of kick off today's podcast.
yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. I think it really kind of sums up the full picture of, I think, what contact is bringing into everybody's lives, this opportunity to be present with the moment and what's happening in it, and how also like the unknown or like this mystery of like trying to discover ourselves and what we're experiencing in the universe is always present as well, and that is a part of that experience. That's kind of been a reoccurring theme this week, is like sitting with the that unknown
Mm,
and seeing the magic in that rather than fearing it, and knowing that it's like shifting the mind frame from, oh, what scary predator could be sitting in the shadows that I can't see, to like, there is an endless field of possibilities in front of me, and I can't even possibly begin to imagine all of the possibilities. And that's amazing because I live in a universe that takes care of me and has all these potentials to offer to me in order to take care of me and provide with me whatever kind of experience I feel like I need, whether that be a challenging one or a positive one.
yeah, absolutely. We have no idea kind of the wiring under the board, so to speak, and it can be or the from one extreme obviously to the other, but the potential for such amazing beauty that we can't even imagine. Like I remember seeing so many of these sort of really positive mantras and affirmations to like when you can ask the universe, surprise me with magic and all this sort of stuff, which is
Right.
really about breaking those boundaries that we normally unconsciously have and
Mhm.
allowing something new that we can't even think about at the point we ask for it to come
Right.
in, you know?
Right. Or just like knowing that when you ask for something, it, to be open in whatever way it initially shows up, because we don't always know like what that's going to look like. I mean, it's funny because I just actually had this experience this week. I'll explain a little bit for the viewers, but you know, we ask for something when we ask for something, and in our minds we have a vision of what that thing is and we just want it to magically be here, and we're not thinking about the fact that we live in a 3D reality where things take time to develop and they kind of have a storyline to them, and you have to have like a through line from point A to point B. And so when we ask for something, we don't always think about what that story is going to look like that gets us there. And sometimes initially it can be very shocking or jarring. So like the other day I did a spell for abundance and community, because I want those two things in my life and I feel like they kind of go hand in hand. And I went through that process, and the very next day I got a text from my landlord saying that she was going to be selling the apartment that we're living in, or the house that we live in. And it completely turned my week upside down. It was just a shock, and and it was very strange, to be having this paradoxical experience of simultaneously, being affected as a human, having emotions, having things come up related to this shocking news, and at the same time knowing that it was my spell, and that this was just one of the dominoes that was going to lead me in the direction of more abundance and community, and a new living situation which we've been wanting anyways. So
Yeah.
um it's a like a be careful what you ask for kind of thing,
Be,
but
yeah, be
also
ca yeah, be
uh
careful what you ask for, but also, don't have any expectation. Let go of all expectation.
yeah, and be
Yeah.
okay with the fact that, like, when change comes and happens, it's gonna bring up feelings, and that's okay. We're all living here in this world as humans, and we experience all sorts of things, and we have emotions, and it's a it's okay. It's a part of the process, and don't resist those emotions, because the more you resist them, the more you actually block the flow of whatever you're asking for to come to you. So, yeah.
Mm.
Because there's a whole other element. There's a physical element, but there's like an emotional element too, of like how to open yourself up to what you're trying to manifest. So, like, say you want abundance, but you have beliefs and emotional habits that make you feel like you're not worthy of it, right?
Mm.
So the universe is going to help you figure out how to remove those blocks. And by doing that, it's going to send things your way that'll bring those to the surface. So you can also look at it as an opportunity, even when negative feelings come up.
Something that I can't really explain popped into my mind when you were talking about that, and that's the psychic element to this going on as well. And like how does one sort of how would one go about sort of acknowledging these different sides and moving aside in a sense in order to allow the best results to come into fruition from whatever's happened?
Yeah, the way that I have experienced it is, I mean, it's going to be different for every person,
Mm, mm,
The way I've experienced it personally for myself this week has been giving my experiences space and time to exist. Because there's a lot of this feeling of wanting to rush in and control the situation. And that's perfectly normal to feel. But if you don't give things time to organically open up to you, and also give yourself time to get a better grasp and understanding of what's happening, you can rush in and block whatever's trying to manifest, I think.
Mm, yeah.
So that like psychic or psychologically, if you want to look at it as a psychological thing, you want to give things room and time to breathe and um to fully reveal themselves, because when changes happen, especially abrupt ones, it kicks up a lot of dirt, kicks up a lot of dust, or like muddies the waters, and you really can't know, you know, what's happening until those things, you know, settle down, basically.
And come into full view, maybe, as kind of. So I'll
Yeah.
just be writing notes there. So thank you very much for that. I'll sort of need to keep that with me throughout the next sort of few years, I think,
Right.
because it's just difficult to remember these things, especially when you've suddenly been hit by something unexpected, and therefore you're not of the vibration where you can sort of rise above it and say, oh, it's like this and that, and the other,
Right.
so it's
Well,
a
and
kind
I
of like
have to
a,
say,
yeah.
like, having that kind of self-control,
Mm,
it's not something I magically have had, or it's not like like naturally a part of my personality. I had to really develop that for a long period of time. And it's like you're not looking to stop emotional reactions altogether or eliminate your emotions. It's just learning how to be present with them when they're saying all sorts of stuff to you, like telling you not just feelings, but also your feelings will try to push you to make like impulsive decisions, to try to counteract what's happening around you. And and this is like, well, I guess at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff, especially psychological stuff, comes down to meditation being an amazing tool, because you start to learn that your emotions and the things that you experience aren't necessarily you. And so because of that, you don't have to listen to them right away. Not to say that you shouldn't take them into consideration, but like you don't have to feel something and then immediately act it out. You can feel something and observe it. And that's, I think, what a big part of what meditation teaches us.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I've upped my meditation game a lot lately, and
I
I
feel like it's
definitely,
required right
yeah,
now.
yeah. It's the beauty of giving yourself that time, that space to kind of like sit in whatever you're sort of experiencing, and obviously go deeper with it. And I think just the act of kind of allowing that t time for yourself is in itself a beautiful gift, and it transforms things within you at deep levels that you can't even sort of see,
Right.
sort of
Right.
thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It makes me
Okay.
think too of an experience I had recently, speaking of like contact experiences, which I think we're going to get into a little bit again today.
Yeah.
Um, like it's also helped me with contact experiences, especially the more strange ones too. Like instead of impulsively acting in fear or pushing things away in fear, um, I had an experience last week of a. So I guess I'll just share the whole thing. I was hanging out in my house and doing my normal mom stuff, and it was like the end of the day, and I was starting to get us all kind of corralled and go moving towards bedtime. And I felt went had gone downstairs to get water for everybody, and I felt this feeling that I usually feel when something's in my home, and there's like a presence or that feeling of like someone looking at you, watching you. It's very easy to feel someone's eyes on you, you know? And and then I kind of when I feel that in my home, because it's my space and I'm, you know, we should always be mindful of being okay with having boundaries about our space, and but that's a whole other topic. You know, I typically inquire into, okay, well, if there's someone in my home, who are they? What are they? And for this, I felt that it was an ET. This is a pretty regular occurrence now at this point, and it doesn't always lead to like conscious contact. So I just made a note of it and was like, okay, hi, hello, and continued about my business. And when I went to go to sleep, and started getting into that half asleep, half awake state. Could feel this presence at the foot of my bed. And then I was like, okay, well, you obviously want to have some contact, some conversations. So I kind of looked more deeply into who this person was. And it was a tall gray, one that I'm not familiar with, that I hadn't at least consciously had previous contact with. And it was cool. I'm getting better at seeing, at least in my mind's eye, ET faces and the details of their faces. So it was very nice to get familiar with his face. And he basically asked, would it be okay if I helped you energetically, like with your chakra system? Or I mean, really, you could call it whatever you want. Chakra is like the word shaman. We just use words that are most commonly used for these kinds of things, but energy system,
Mm.
some people see it as meridians or what have you. And he started to, so I agreed and did my best to relax because, it's unfamiliar. The energy is unfamiliar. Being in contact with an ET can feel strange sometimes because it's outside of our normal day to day, especially with something that's a little higher dimensional, like a tall gray. I don't know if I had mentioned that. It was a tall gray.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it was
They're
very,
they're of they're of a similar vibration as like the Sasani, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
So they're closer to like phasing out of physical reality. Um, so yeah, I was getting familiar with his energy. It was very interesting, like to see it, what it looked like within my mind's eye. It was very kind of like looking at abstract art, his energy signature. And but every time I would ask him a question, he would revert back to looking like a tall gray, kind of just because it's like a familiar thing for me to visualize him as. It's a little harder to talk to an abstract art painting. um, so I was asking him questions about what he was doing, and because it's higher dimensional information, it's a little bit harder to explain. I think the gist of what was happening was some experiences I had as a child had thrown off my lower energy centers, and he was trying to help me with basically like either reviving them to some degree, like getting more life juice in there, and also helping them to move in the correct direction, like rotation wise. And you know, there was some other things. I guess I'm not sure how much detail I want to go into, but it was interesting because it was hard to sit with. So this is where like what I was talking about previously comes in handy, because I was having you know, I was tempted to have these emotional reactions of fear, and it would throw me out of the experience for a minute. And then I would get myself back to being relaxed and get back into the experience. Um, and I was able to sustain it for a certain period of time. Um, because I could actually physically feel the energy with this particular contact experience, which is a first, or it's the first time that I felt it so strongly and so obviously that something was actually happening. And so that was a little bit new, and new stuff. Once again, the unknown can be easy to trigger fears. And yeah, we did about as much as we could. I mean, they're so respectful of boundaries. They never push us further, or at least I've never had an experience of being pushed further than I'm able to go. And chances are he'll probably be back. I think that's the vibe that I got, to because it sometimes you can fix, or not fix, but sometimes you can do energy work and complete it in one session, but sometimes it can take multiple, especially when things are a little bit new and fears a little bit more fresh. But yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what an experience.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that, and share how the meditation aspect can be helpful with those things, because that's a part of what I was doing, is meditative techniques to help me get back into the experience when I would get scared.
How does it make you feel then that these guys tall greys are here to assist you. That you know, I just think of all the sort of connotations that maybe other people will have about greys, tall greys. You know, there's a certain perception out there in the collective, but like I think you and I know that those sorts of things exist, but so does many other things full of love as well.
Yes.
Um, so I wanted to sort of ask you sort of how you've been integrating that idea in relation to assistance from that kind of being, and you know, what you would share with other people out there in, in relation to the kind of feeling of caring, of boundaries of love that was given to you.
Um, hmm. I would say, because when you actually have the experience in the moment, it's, well, first off, I would say to not worry too much because typically ETs that are more familiar to humans are usually the first types that interact with you. Typically. I mean, a lot of people do end up having interactions with grays related to the hybrid program, which is such a huge topic that we're going to have to do an entire episode on just so people can fully understand it. But the
Yeah,
hybrid
yeah,
program is not necessarily a bad thing. But so there are people who have those experiences, but most of the time they're not going to remember them. Um, and um, Usually when you're having conscious contact initially, it's going to be beings like the Pleiadians that are very pretty much look like humans for the most part. Um, and so it, I guess that in itself is an expression of how they care about us and love us and care about our boundaries and don't want to push us too far because when it comes to conscious contact, they gradually work in the direction of us being able to have contact experiences with like tall grays. So, um, this experience I had was basically the first conscious contact I had with a tall gray. But for me, it all began with a Pleiadian woman. And so, yeah, I guess that's what I would say about that. And also, you're always going to have a internal process happening with these conscious contact experiences where you are going to be working with your fear. That's kind of always going to be a part of it to some degree. You'll you'll reach a comfort level and then um you'll be given something new and the cycle will start kind of over again.
yeah,
You'll
yeah,
get to a new place and the fear will come back and then you'll work with the fear and then you'll get adjusted again and then you'll get into a comfort level and then something new will come. And I think we're just working in waves in little cycles because that's what humans are used to getting
yeah,
to a place where we're comfortable with all ETs, all ET
yeah,
contact.
yeah. Oh,
And I
thank
do
you
want
so
to,
much for.
oh yes,
Sorry.
yes. No, thank you. Um, no, I don't mean to interrupt, but since while we're still on the topic, I did want to add this last piece too, um, because I got this information yesterday and it kind of came along with a download simultaneously. It was outside information, but also came with some non-physical information. And that's as we get closer to open contact and humanity fully waking up to this reality, the contrast is going to get more intense, and like the dualistic stuff is going to get more intense, the polarity, and so I'm getting to new levels, and I know many other people who are getting to new levels of love and connection with ETs and stranger ETs. And also, the mainstream media is starting to head in the direction of um, pushing a polarized picture of that ETs are negative, that they should be avoided and pushed away. And I don't know. I think it's a Netflix show. My father was telling me about it yesterday, and it really like perked my ears and made me interested when he started talking about the storyline of the show. I think, oh, what's it called? Of course I'm gonna forget it. Um Resident Alien, I think is what it's called. But we can always double check and put it in the show notes for you guys if you're curious. Um, but it's about an alien that has comes to Earth and is attempting to basically destroy the world. He wants to destroy the planet, and but through living with humans, he changes his mind. But the key to this particular show that I think is the most negative and insidious in terms of like, I think the government and the media pursuing its own narrative, trying to put its own narrative out about what's happening, um, is that they took all this information that is present in UFO communities, um, and they have put it into the storyline, but from a negative angle, so that there's like a whole part of the storyline about the Greys and how the Greys are harvesting people, keeping people enslaved, all this really intense stuff. And it's woven into this show, which is essentially supposed to be a comedy show. And they they really went out of their way to do their research. He was telling me details about the show and some of the storyline angles and stuff. And they really went out of their way to get a lot of information that's based kind of like rooted in reality of like people's experiences, but then put a negative spin on it. So the reason why I share this with everyone is that this is going to start happening more and more, most likely. We're going to start seeing more intricate ways of pushing a negative narrative for the public, that's influenced by mostly by governments at this point. And it's not to say to be, to go down conspiracy theory rabbit holes or to get paranoid about the government, but to have this in your awareness. That's the most important part. Just because you're seeing this stark contrast doesn't mean that um, it doesn't mean that it is what is actually happening. It's essentially the old paradigm's way of trying to hold on to the collective belief system of
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
rooted in fear. It's trying to keep everyone in a state of fear. And so the best thing that we can do is to
Come
not be,
back to self. Come back to
yes,
self.
come
Yeah.
back to self and
Every
not
time.
not be afraid, and understand that things aren't they are not how they are presented. They are not how they seem.
Mm.
And all we can know for certain is that culture, society, governments, they try to shape worldviews, and not always for the best. So the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
we do
But
is think
yeah.
for ourselves in this situation.
Think for ourselves, you know, we can see what's going on out there, what ideas are being offered to us, but it's we don't have to take those on board. Perhaps that's the old paradigm there, where kind of everyone comes together and kind of believes what they're told, but that's not the case anymore. It
Right.
always come back to self, be self-discerning. Everyone's truth is going to be different, but equally as valid. There are as many versions of reality as there are people. So just
Right.
follow your own authentic truth.
Yes, you are the one that's guiding your experience in life and aligning you with particular timelines and particular ways of experiencing. And it's not to say that the timelines that go down a darker road are not valid. Some souls want to have those experiences, want to have those challenges, want to have those soul workouts, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
And getting really in touch with your own soul and your own desires of what you want to experience
Mm.
is necessary. Because I know for myself, you know, it's just as possible to live in a world that wakes up one day and everybody is suddenly in fourth density and ETs are here. But I know for my experience and what I'm trying to have in this lifetime, that's not really in alignment with that. So I'm not experiencing that kind of awakening version of Earth. I'm experiencing one where we are waking up through a challenging process. And that's
Yeah, well,
what,
that's why we came here. We didn't
right.
come here for the destination. We came here for the journey and all that the journey has to offer, which arguably is far more value and profound than the experience of being in the end at the end goal, so to speak.
Right, right.
You know,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, I think there's different things to learn on different versions of this awakening Earth, you know?
Mm. I've also had like some experiences kind of a little bit similar to yours, I guess, with regards to kind of tall grey energy. And yeah, it was very odd. Again, kind of I was only with the experience for a short time, but he communicated to me up front that he's going to be energetically assisting me. I felt sort of judders and things like that while I was in that sort of perfect balanced state of consciousness and aware of those higher vibrations. And then I sort of came back and unfortunately lost it because that's what normally happens with me. I get too excited and then ping back into my body.
So I guess that's the other aspect of this too, is
Yeah,
not just fear that can throw you out, but like
excitement. Yeah,
excitement and wanting more too. uh,
exactly,
Wanting it to
exactly.
stay, maybe even worrying that, that's the experience is going to end soon, and
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah,
that as well.
yeah, yeah. But what one example of a crazy experience I wanted to share today, which is quite different, I think, from the majority, is one morning I kind of woke up. I was just in a sort of that sort of hypnagogic state, halfway in between sleep and awake, and but I was definitely projecting. I was aware of my room, but the same colors weren't there. The rough dimensions were, but I was definitely sort of in a higher version of myself, although I still had my physical body and could very, very haphazardly move it a little bit, but it was a real struggle to do so and to have control of it.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say it's probably quite a close to the physical reality, not as far as sort of pure astral experience, which is a lot more fluid. But I had the weirdest experience. So I looked in the corner of the room and something came through the wall. And as it passed through, I noticed that there was white light coming the other side of the wall as it actually phased through into the room. And then it came over and hovered above my head. It was like looked a bit like a black cloud, to be honest. And of course, at first I was like, the hell is that? I was it brought up some fear. And I remember trying to sort of hold my arms up in order to sort of say no, in order to stop it. And it was funny because I couldn't really control my arms. They were wobbling around in strange ways as I was trying to hold them up. But what importantly, I kind of gave up resisting. I think enough conscious awareness was there that I was like, okay, do you know what? I'm going to surrender to this. I'm going to let go. I'm going to allow it to happen. So as soon as I let my arms relax, staying in that state of kind of balancing precariously the consciousness between these different realms, this, whatever it was, kind of came down towards my head. And it sounds completely insane, but this is absolutely what I experienced. As it approached my head, this sort of thing was warm, and there was a humming to it. There was a vibration to it,
Hmm.
and it literally passed through my head, my skull,
Hmm.
and lodged itself in a portion of my brain, basically.
Hmm.
It was the weirdest sensation all day. I was walking around feeling that there was something sort of quasi physical inside my head. Um, Even I have a memory of what it felt like. So as I'm talking about it right now, I can kind of feel it there. So
Hmm.
it's left an imprint of some kind. But the experience I had was I feel it was some kind of sort of almost like a bit of technology or natural technology or consciousness technology that created a certain vibration for me to experience that was a lot higher than normal.
Mm,
So I was walking, I just had this impulse to walk down to the beach. Like, I live very close to the seaside here. And everything I saw with pinpoint accuracy, like my eyesight had improved, my hearing had improved. I could hear so like everything pin sharp, you know. And I felt this complete joy, this bliss, this peace without the back chat of the thoughts in the back of your mind about what happened yesterday, what's going to happen tomorrow, how am I going to get through this, or I've got to prepare for that. None of that was there. It was just this happy experience of going from one moment to the next and enjoying and sort of seeing the funny side in things. And, you know, it was the most pure, fun, beautiful experience. And the in the evening, it basically suddenly left because so basically someone contacted me, and that sort of provoked a sort of reaction because I was a bit, you know, they were sort of being quite demanding, and I think that sudden shift in my own field dislodged it and it disappeared again. Um, but it's not. I don't know if anyone out there's had similar experience. It sounds insane, and yet it
mm,
was absolutely real to me. And I think it goes to show the length, the amount of unknowns there are in this universe, and how perhaps other beings or our higher self or guides can assist us in these ways. And my learning from that experience is, you know, I now know I have a sort of idea of what to aim for in terms of the feeling, the vibration that I want to experience, that I want to be. So it was absolutely remarkable, and I would hesitate to guess probably something that my guy ET Guides helped me with.
it sounds like it. It
Yeah,
almost reminds me a little bit of, I'm trying to think of the term that people use. I don't know if it's like a cohabitation or something, but I know that some people talk about where you have like a soul contract and you agree to have an ET partially living inside of you, where it's like a you're like
habiting kind of almost.
cohabiting,
Yeah.
co-steering the wheel, you know. And a lot of people, yeah, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much at the moment, but it's interesting. It made me think of that. Not that it lasted for you, but maybe you had a taste of that kind of an experience to help you learn something. Sounded
And
like
it, yeah, and it definitely taught me that kind of assistance that ultimately, I suppose, from the sort of non-dualistic point of view, that comes from self could come in all shapes and sizes.
that.
And that, you know, what at first I was frightened of because it was a black cloud that was floating above me. Who wouldn't be, right?
Right,
And
right.
yet it was the most profound and beautiful gift I think I've ever received. And it made me really emotional to even just now talking about it.
Yeah.
It was so, yeah. So the I think another message there is just things come in odd packages that and you wouldn't expect, you know. So there you go.
Yeah. No, that's a really good, that is a good message. And I think it is reflective of the opportunity we have with contact with ETs, that sometimes things look strange and intimidating, but end up being able to share love and experiences with you that you just have always wanted or couldn't imagine to have. And, you know, and I also think it links together with the concept of shadow work as well. And I know I mentioned this in another episode, but oftentimes, and I was thinking about it earlier today too. It's like we so often see like monsters and things that we see as scary, and we think there's nothing inside of that. It's soulless, and it's only here to torture me, kind of thing. But so often when you go into those experiences, you lean into them and allow for them, you know, we get to experience, in particular with shadow work, um, parts of ourselves that are so beautiful, or are innocent or loving, and they were just being protected by this big scary monster as a defense mechanism to try and keep people from hurting a part of us that is precious and sensitive and sweet and talented too. That's the other thing. And I think even Carl Jung, who was the person who basically came up with the concept of shadow work and the shadow, is that yes, the shadow can harbor aspects of ourselves that we don't like, but it also harbors the beautiful, talented parts of ourselves that were put down, and typically by people who are jealous, um, parts of us that were put down and told we're not good enough. And so that's like the gold inside of the shadow that we can find as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's fantastic to be able to sort of talk about these things in a public forum, because I was just thinking, before we started this podcast, I had all these experiences. I was just holding on to them, not really putting them out there. And I definitely feel it's high time to do so. So it's a wonderful forum and experience to be able to speak out loud about them. And hopefully some of these experiences will assist others who are maybe going through similar things and aren't sure what to make of them.
Yeah. I really think that this is our way of, I feel that as a collective, this community of people who are interested in ETs, who are trying to engage with them consciously, as that collective, I think we are being asked to start coming out into the world more with this information and not just stay within our own little echo chamber. And I think this is a way that you and me have been called to kind of do that work in our own way, you know?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
What I one of the things that I think you mentioned last time in the last podcast was that we were going to sort of do a particular show on listeners' stories and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, that's still in the pipeline, so to speak, because we are still. It takes time to kind of set that sort of thing up. But I
Yes.
do want to really say to everyone listening, if you feel drawn to sharing things with us, that in a way that can really be helpful to everybody, then please do feel free to reach out, get in contact with us, because we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, we're going to continue to follow this excitement that we initially had of putting the offer out there for everyone to send stories. And we are realizing now that yes, it will take some time to accumulate these things. And, but we're just going to keep putting the offer out there to everybody and keep sharing our email address and letting everyone know that this opportunity is open. Also, it sounds like we might be getting a guest soon. We're going to tease that a little bit. We're not going to share who necessarily because we still need to confirm everything, but sounds like we'll have our first human guest soon, which will be fun and interesting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of you guys listening out there, you know, stay true to yourselves and each other. Remember, everyone's going through their own processes at the moment. Create space for yourselves and others. Have love, compassion for yourselves and others. And we can't wait to see you real soon.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today and sharing these conversations, these energies. We can't wait to hear from you all. And we'll see you in the next episode.